everybody, I am Zenith Rule, and welcome back to the Disney Debate, where Kat Mac, Y2 Staller, and I discuss Disney films and other Disney products. Now, as per usual, for some of the minor films in the decade, we usually rotate who goes in and out because not everyone has the same schedule. So Y2 Staller is not going to be joining us today, but he is missing out because today we're talking about the Sign of Zorro, and man, he is missing out. Anyway, before we get into that, how's it going, Kat?
Hello, my name is Diego de la Vega. You almost sort of killed my father. Prepare to die. Oh man, I am so excited to be doing this. Like, I called dibs like the second we started planning who was reviewing what in the 60s. I've been dying to watch Zorro for years. And it's like, I know of the character, but I never actually watched the show. But growing up, when I used to watch the Disney sing-alongs, they actually had the sing-along for the Zorro theme, and I loved it so much. But unfortunately, at the time, they didn't have it released on video or anything, so I couldn't watch it. And trying to catch it on TV was almost impossible. So I'm really happy and really excited we watched this, and I'm even more excited that it turned out to be good.
Yeah. So let me just say, first of all, we watched this both on the Disney Movies YouTube channel. Basically, you spend $3 to watch it in standard definition, and a lot of the videos, a lot of the movies on there are also available in high definition as well. This one is only available in standard definition, but I just gotta say, Disney Movies YouTube, I used to really not like it, mostly because there was a glitch where I think it was where if you refresh the page, it would suddenly like say that you didn't buy the movie and you would have to buy it again. And that's what happened to us like 4 years ago when we were trying to do this initially. Since then, we have not had any problems. Like, honestly, like, you get a rental period of, I believe it's 72 hours to watch the film, or you can buy it for $9.99, which for this film is definitely worth it. And I mean, granted, yeah, some of the movies we've seen, like, say, Toby Tyler, were not worth the money that we spent, but it's only $3, and I mean, I think it was like $6 for the high definition if you really want that. But even so, this service is really, really good, and they have all these films that we can't find anywhere else. Like, they're just there. Anything that's in the Disney Vault in the Disney Library is on there. So, Kat, like, wouldn't you say that this is actually a really good service now?
Yeah, it's actually very much a relief. Although, I don't know, it's kind of a, you know, was it Catch 22 or something like that? Like, on the one hand, I'm glad that all of the obscure stuff is continuously readily available to everyone at a cheap price. But on the other hand, part of the appeal of the Disney Vault is that they're promoting all their stuff at like a limited release, and that they do it periodically to like, you know, to a mass appeal, like saying, "Oh, look what came out of our vault, and look at all this brand new footage and behind the scenes and all these special editions and stuff." Like, to me, that it kind of like, I get that they do that mostly with their most famous stuff, like the big stuff from like the Renaissance era and the Golden Age and everything, but I wish they would kind of do that with the more obscure things, because some of them are actually pretty good. It's just a shame that they're not readily available to the public. And I think, if they tweaked it a bit and they, added their special features and stuff, I think that they could promote more of like the lesser known stuff. Like, to do this with Zorro, I think would be brilliant, because honestly, from what I've seen, they didn't actually put Zorro on DVD until 2009. And yeah, and before that, it was like only certain volumes on VHS, which is really a shame because you'd think they'd market the hell out of Zorro, but apparently not. So I am glad everything's readily available, because otherwise there's no way we could do these reviews. But on the other hand, I really do wish I really do wish they'd make more things readily available in the Disney Vault.
Yeah,
So
I
that's just my opinion.
I do kind of wish that more things were available physically because, like, I mean, I would be willing to buy some of these things if I knew they were actually good. Like, I'm not going to go out and buy, say, like, Toby Tyler or Tonka or something like that, but, stuff like Third Man on the Mountain or the one we're talking about today, Zorro, I would be all over watching and buying Zorro. So, I mean, it's kind of weird how much of their old films aren't really given a lot of love. Like I said before, this film was not given an HD upgrade. This is only available on DVD, and it's not colorized. It's black and white. Now, there's an argument to be made about whether colorization affects a film, and I think in certain cases it does, but there's still no option for it here, and it just shows that there's really not much love for this film, which is kind of crazy because this is actually really good, but also Zorro is a well-known figure. Zorro is big. Like, Zorro is one of the biggest legends. Everyone's heard of Zorro in some capacity, and it's one of those things, like, it's not like the Lone Ranger, to which it's kind of outdated. Zorro is still relevant to this day, and they're still making film adaptations, so I'm surprised that Disney is kind of, like, letting this go by the wayside.
Zorro is the reason we have Batman. That in and of itself deserves respect.
Zorro is the reason we have Roronoa Zorro in One Piece. So, I mean, like, it's inspired so much, and it's a figure that everyone can get behind. But before we say any more, Kat, why don't you give us a brief summary of the Zorro character and what this film is all about?
Okay, this will be a bit difficult because as we were debating like earlier in the post on the page, there are technically two Zorro movies. There's the Sign of Zorro that we watched, and then Zorro the Avenger. From what I heard, these two are basically the same thing. Well, in terms of structure, they're actually episodes from the original TV run, just edited together in movie format. So this one, The Sign of Zorro, I believe is the sort of the combination of four episodes, the first four episodes, and it stars the character Diego de la Vega. He is being summoned back from his school in Spain by his father, who cryptically says, "Oh, we need your help back home." Well, he doesn't know why, but of course, being the good son, he goes back. But along the way, the ship captain informs him that his home, which is in, the prototype Los Angeles in California, which in 1820 was ruled by Spain at the time, pretty much tells him that his town has been overrun by the corrupt, captain that runs the town. What's his name? Yeah, it's being run by the corrupt Comandante Monastero. And he pretty much is like the sheriff of Nottingham in that he's taxing the hell out of all the rancheros and landowners, and is basically just being a brute and throwing anybody in jail that he wishes to in any way that it benefits him. So Diego, upon realizing this and knowing what a hothead his father is and his intense love for justice, decides that, well, no doubt that the Commandante knows that I'm coming. I should probably, create a facade for myself, keep myself on the down low so I don't arouse any suspicion. So even though he's a really good fencer, he chucks out all of his fencing trophies and pretends that he is the worst fencer like in the world. And when he gets there and he sees for himself just how bad everything is, how even one of his father's friends is being thrown in jail for, quote unquote treason and that there's a whole assassination attempt on him, he decides that he has to do something, but he can't sabotage, his role in society because he comes from a wealthy family. So he dons the persona of Zorro, which is Spanish for the fox. And this is pretty much him trying to, pretty much undo the Commandante in any way possible, and free all of the people that are unjustly put in jail, and just be the man of the people. So he's pretty much a Hispanic Batman, except way more charming, if that's even possible.
I think what really makes this film work is that it kind of combines a lot of different things together, because a lot of the films that we've seen recently from the 60s have gotten better, but they've also shown that they've been a little bit dated in some aspects. And I can certainly say that Zorro is not dated. It combines a lot of different concepts together, such as the Robin Hood concept, the vigilante concept, the Lone Ranger, hero on a horse concept. A lot of these hero concepts together to create something that really hasn't been truly replicated. They've done something maybe a little bit similar with, like, say, film noir heroes like the Spirit or the Shadow, but it's not exactly the same thing. This is just a person who sees injustice in the world, goes out and takes care of it with his own hands, doesn't reveal his identity, but does everything he does for the people. A little bit like Batman, but without the tragic backstory, and with a lot more of the humanity. And the key to this version of Zorro is the wit. This is a very clever, a very charming, and very funny Zorro. And in many aspects, I'm like, this is kind of how the character should be. He's not brooding. He's not as badass as some of the other Zorros, but he does have his badass moments. But the key point here is how clever he is and how he uses his wit to get out of these situations. And I really have to say that a lot of the appeal to watching this film is seeing his one-liners after he gets out of certain situations with his dual identity, because he goes through a lot of the stuff as Zorro, and then he comes out as De La Vega, as his public persona, and he makes these comments, these inside jokes that the viewer gets, but the person in the film doesn't, and it's just a lot of fun. There's this one point where he goes and he pretty much like defeats the villain of the film in a fencing duel, and he comes back and he pops up with like 2 bottles of like wine or whatever, and he's just like, oh, I was just making sure to save the wine from that villainous Zorro. And he's like, I've just not been feeling myself all evening. And it's just, the wit is what I really like about it.
Yeah, the guy who plays Zorro is Guy Williams, who some of you might know as the father from Lost in Space. But in this one, like, his charm is, like, dialed up to 11. Like, I absolutely adore him in this. Like, as soon as I saw him, I'm like, ooh, hello. And you can't help but like him. Like, he has such a great smile. He has a great delivery. He's a fantastic actor, and he actually knows how to fence on top of that. So, watching him, like, seeing his delivery, seeing how how he jumps about, fighting, and just being awesome. Like, it's great.
And it's not just fighting; it's also pretending, because as Zorro, he's a skilled fencer. But as De La Vega, he and his assistant have to pretend like they're somebody else. So he pretends like he's the worst fencer in the world. And now, it's okay, it's one thing to act that way, but during the fencing match, where he has to stop another criminal as himself, he has to pretend like he doesn't know what he's doing while still defeating a master fencer, and he does it so expertly, and I'm just like, it's just so interesting and so cool to see how much he is into his character and how this character is able to switch things up without ever really breaking stride. There's never one moment where he stops pretending to be De La Vega as this learned just scholar and not the fencer that he actually is. He never once breaks that character. And you keep waiting for that moment, and they do their best. Like, Monasterio does his best to make him reveal that he's Zorro, because he keeps catching on to these little things that Zorro does, but never once does Vega break character. And it's just like, that is what is badass about his character.
Yeah, Monastero is surprisingly a really competent villain and a really good foil to Zorro. Because, like, he's ruthless and he's cunning. And even though Zorro does often foil his plan, he immediately comes up with, like, a counter plan to it. And if Zorro, like, gets him in a bind where he is about to be exposed for his cruelty and corruption, he immediately comes up with some sort of improvised like reason for why he does what he does. It's like, it's really brilliant, and you can't help but sort of root for them both, because one is usually never above the other. It is like it is very rare that Zorro completely gets the best of Monastero until the very end. But I don't know, it's really cool. It's sort of like watching Sherlock and Moriarty trying to outdo each other. And it's like, and a lot of like their plans make sense too. Like, he wants to get rid of this one guy who's like rousing up problems and and saying that he's like committing treason. Well, unfortunately, he has no proof. So what does he do? He gets his lawyer to lie to the guy and tells him, "Oh yeah, you're free to go. Leave right away." But instead, he makes the plan to shoot the guy as he's leaving and then claim that, "Oh, he was trying to escape, so I shot him on sight." That's clever. Really messed up, but clever. So, and the funny thing is, and you know what the cool thing is, I found out, the actor Britt Lamond, he actually was a straight up soldier from World War II. He actually has 3 Purple Hearts, a Silver Star, and a Bronze Star. Like,
Wow.
that's legit badass. We actually saw him, and this isn't the first time he played a soldier as well. We actually saw him in Tonka. He played General Custer.
Oh, yeah, he did a good job in that. Like, say what you will about Tonka, but I think his performance was actually really good, and he does a fantastic job here. I love how devilishly clever he is. I mean, when he comes up with a plan to make a fake Zorro, like a Zorro imposter, and to give Zorro a bad name, like, I'm just like, that's brilliant, because no one knows who Zorro is, and the costume is such that anyone could wear it if they have a similar build and look like Zorro, behave, pretend that they are Zorro. And they do a great job of showing how he does everything in his power to find all the loopholes. He tries to stage a mock trial when he has to actually do a fair trial, but he delays the judge from coming in for a day, so he goes in and puts his own judge in place of that. And like, there are so many little plans that he has that I'm like, I respect you as a villain. I respect your wit. I respect how you go about doing what you do. I don't agree with what he does, but he's so fun to watch, and that's what makes a good superhero film. You need a good foil. You need a good villain that can keep up with him. And as a battle of wits, as a chess match, this is just so enjoyable.
Oh, definitely. Actually, the interesting thing is, his actor and the actor that plays the guy he hired to play the fake Zorro, both of them actually tried out for the role of Zorro. But And even though they didn't get it, they were both kept on anyway because they were both insanely good with fencing. So that's got to say something.
Yeah, that has got to say something, because I do think we should talk about the choreography here. The fencing and the sword fighting on display is fantastic. Like,
Oh yeah, I was so impressed. Like having seen all the fight choreography from like the 50s and how freaking cheesy and like half-assed they were, like seeing this was a breath of fresh air. Like it was like impeccable the way that they all fought, like and how they incorporated the surroundings and all the props and everything into it.
it's like, this film is like, if you took The Princess Bride, if you took The Princess Bride and dialed down the parody nature of it, like the humor a little bit, that's what this is, because it's kind of the same type of setup, except it's not really a love story. But like, it has all these really great fight scenes. It has all these clever, funny things going on. It may not have the inconceivable guy, but like this film is, I believe it holds up to this day because of just how watchable it is. Let's talk about the pacing. The pacing is so much better than any film we've seen up until this point in the Disney timeline, would you say?
I would, yeah, definitely. I mean, there are parts where you can kind of tell where Act 1 ends and Act 2 begins, but that's to be expected when you splice together, TV episodes. But for the most part, everything kind of blends seamlessly into one another. Like, it is a coherent film. It's not like they stop something and then all of a sudden start up something new, like what they did with Davy Crockett. So this is a lot more seamless, and I was thoroughly enjoying it and thoroughly entertained. I don't think I ever checked the clock once while I was watching this. I was just, wanted to see how much more badass Zorro could be, and what ways he was gonna, do up the Commandante next.
Yeah, it keeps your attention. It has it from the very beginning, and you're like, okay, we have these charming actors. We have the story of corrupt government, revenge, and like, the more I watched, the more I'm just like, I was entranced by all of these characters and the events that were going on. Never once did I really say, oh, this is boring. Never once did I like really look away and say, oh, I need to pause the film or something, because it's like, in films that are badly paced, say films like what's his name? Films like Toby Tyler, or films that are based on books, like Kidnapped, for example, that we talked about having bad pacing in certain parts. These are the films where, like, at certain points you'll be glancing at your watch, wondering like, okay, when's the good stuff gonna happen? When's this gonna happen? Zorro does away with a lot of that, and just, it has these events, they naturally unfold, and it's just like, it's a back and forth between these two characters who are very smart, and you don't know who's going to win, and that's the fun part. It's a lot like Death Note in a way, except for, without all the death, but it's very much a battle of wits. And I was just along for the ride. I was just like, you know what? I'm down for this. Let's go. Let's have fun with it. And I just, I think this is one of the films that holds up the best that we've seen thus far. Like, not counting the modern films, because those are a different time frame, but from 30s to here, even some of the animated films had problems of pacing. Like, even just looking at Snow White, it's a fun film, but it definitely had pacing issues, and it definitely had a lot of padding. And here, I was just like, okay, who's he gonna fight next? What's he gonna do next? How is he gonna get out of this mess? And it's a classic superhero tale, but told in a very engaging and fun way. The presentation is just that good.
Yeah, definitely. Like It really is like disappointing that Disney doesn't play this more often, because I think this would be a huge hit, especially now that, superheroes are all the rage. I mean, granted, Zorro's not a superhero, but he's definitely an inspiration for a lot of heroes. Because, I mean, he's like the masked guy who lurks in the shadows and, uses his wits as well as a hardcore set of fighting skills. I mean, how could you not like that?
He's Batman.
I know, like I said, he's prototype Hispanic Batman. And actually, I really like the supporting cast too, because like nobody felt wasted or out of place.
Yeah, everyone seemed to have a purpose. Like his father was there to be the kind of the voice of the people. Like he represents the nature of the people who want to rebel, but they don't have any means, and he's just too stubborn and keeps fighting even when he's shot. He keeps trying to fight. And so it's just like these people, they're being down, they want to fight, and that's what he represents. And then you have the rest of the townsfolk who are all either trying to help Zorro in some way, or they're trying to help his father, or they're all doing something. And then there's the sheriff, who is just a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, Sergeant Garcia. Yeah, we actually get two alumni from Toby Tyler in this. We have Sergeant Garcia, played by Henry Calvin. He was the strong man in the first one, and while in that one he was kind of sort of like a big old grump who was like a softie underneath. In this one, he's like a jolly fat man who's like he's following orders, but he's doing it in like the nicest way possible.
He's so
Like
much fun to watch. Like he goes around. And he, even when he's bringing someone to prison, he's just like, he's apologizing for the guards, and he's just, he's being very polite. And he's just, you can understand that he loves his job, and he wants to be nice to the people, and he's not evil the same way that the Commandante is.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I'm like at one point, when Zorro frees the traitor, they capture his wife and daughter as a means to lure him back and turn himself in. And the soldiers are ready to get all rough with them and shove them in shove them in their cells. And he's like, yo, guys, ease up. These are ladies here. Excuse me, ladies. Would you please kindly walk into these prison cells? And I'm like, what a nice guy.
And then there's the end of the film when the Commandante is finally taken down, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But when the Commandante is finally taken down, he gets to be the new Commandante, and he's so jolly. Like he's just like, wait, me? I get to be the new Commandante, and he's so joyous, and he's like, I declare a holiday. Like, he doesn't even care about Zorro. He's just like, I'm just so happy right now. And I'm like, this guy is so cool. Like, I like him. I like how they made him into a character that could have easily just been like the Sheriff of Nottingham, where he's just abusing his position. But we already had that type of character. We had that with the Commandante. Here is just it's a well-meaning character put in a position, just following orders, but he does his best because he loves his job, and I like that.
Yeah, and he could have easily fallen into the stereotype of like the bumbling sidekick whose ineptitude ultimately is the reason why the hero manages to get away. But that's really not the case here. Like he does his darndest. It's just that Zorro is too clever for him. Like genuinely too clever. Like at one point he even catches him off guard, sort of pokes a sword in his bag and says, you move and I run you through. But then he props up the sword so that way the guy thinks that he's still there.
He does this a couple times to a couple different people, and I'm just like, wow, Zorro's like everywhere. He's just like, here, I'm gonna make you think that you're under attack.
Like, who wants a proctology exam? And then the other character, also from Toby Tyler, is Zorro's manservant named Bernardo, who's played by Gene Sheldon. He was the clown in Toby Tyler. And once again, we have a completely different character here. Whereas in the first one, he was this guy who, despite being a clown, was very eloquent and full of wisdom and everything. In this one, he's completely mute. Like he conveys everything through pantomiming, and while his character in the original source material is supposed to be mute and deaf, in this one he's just mute. However, he pretends to be deaf because just the same way that Zorro's alter ego pretends that he can't fight, uh, Bernardo pretends that he can't hear. That way, when he happens to be around the Commandante and overhears one of his schemes or whatever, the Commandante thinks that he can't hear him. That's clever. And not only that, but he also helps Zorro out, either, taking his horse away when he doesn't need him, being there to, with his costume at a moment's notice. He even impersonates Zorro at points when Diego's being suspected of being Zorro, and everyone's like, well, we know this is him for certain, but then he, all of a sudden, Zorro appears out there and then leaves a note and then just takes off. And and then you see Bernardo, and he looks so pleased with himself for doing that. It's so weird. It's like a happier mute version of Alfred.
He is one of the best characters in the film. He's very useful. He's very expressive. Like, there's one point where there's an imposter Zorro. Well, Zorro, climbs up a ladder inside the inside the room where the other Zorro is, and Bernardo is moving around the ladder, so the fake Zorro can't get away. In one of the funnier scenes of the film, because he tries to climb down the balcony, well, the ladder's on the other side, so he goes back in through the door and goes to the other door, but the ladder's been moved again. And
that pretty much forces him to out himself to the crowd and see that there are two Zorros, so that he's, impersonating the real one. So, again, clever.
But I think what really works, and what I like about Bernardo is that this could have easily been a character that was either wasted or mocked because of his disability. It's never brought up as a detriment in the film. And for this time period, for a character to pretend to be deaf and to not be able to speak at all, not only is he extremely useful, but he's put in a respected position, and he's the second badass of the film. And the stuff that he does, he gets across everything through his pantomimes in a way that's respectful, and he also is pretty much the reason why Zorro's able to get everything done, because he takes all this information and he gives it to Zorro. And there's one point in the film where the Commandante suspects that he's actually faking it when he first shows up. He's wondering, is this character really deaf? He shoots a gun right next to him and the sergeant. The sergeant freaks out, but Bernardo does nothing.
I know, I was really impressed. And this happens as soon as they get into town. The Commandante suspects him right away of not actually being deaf, and so logically he decides to surprise him with a loud noise. But yeah, Bernardo does not flinch at all. That is a gun being fired right next to him, and he doesn't even flinch. That is really impressive. Bravo, guy, bravo.
And that's kind of where I really started loving Bernardo. I think from the very beginning he was a good character, especially because he's the one who suggested that idea of kind of disguising his identity as well and pretending to be something he's not. And he's a very good friend to De La Vega, and everything that he does, I'm I don't know what their relationship was before, but I just you get the feeling of their relationship without any real words from Bernardo. And this is hard to pull off. Having a character who's deaf and mute is very hard to pull off in a film, believably and respectably. And they just do such a good job here. And again, this is the 60s, where this would not be as respected as it is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I studied sign language in high school, so and of course he doesn't use any actual sign language, like maybe a few letters, but for the most part, like you can, even if you don't know sign language, you can tell what he's talking about. That's how good at pantomiming he is. And even though he does seem a bit silly at times, it's part of pantomiming. You have to be extremely expressive in order to convey your words across without actually saying them. And I think he does an excellent job in this movie. Like, it honestly, I feel like it's becoming sort of a lost art form at this point, pantomime and doing it correctly. So, yeah, I definitely like the way they went about this. And, you know, it's a shame that he doesn't show up in later incarnations, because I have a feeling some people might take issue with it, that, oh, if he's not really deaf, they should have an actual deaf person. But, for the most part, he plays the part extremely well and very convincingly. So, yeah, bravo to him.
Yeah, so like the main characters are engaging, like the plot is really great, the side characters are great, like there's just so much to really like about this film. And I do think the cinematography for its time is really great. They do reuse sets a little bit because they have similar locations, but they do a good job of bringing us to other places and other locations, and filming the fight scenes in a certain way to make them more engaging. For the time period, this is a well-filmed movie, and even in black and white, like I still thought it was very well shot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would have liked to see it in color, but for the most part, I didn't think it needed it too much. I mean, there were points where the night scenes were a little too dark and you couldn't really make out what was happening, but for the most part, it's not distracting. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it's shot in a a well done enough way where you can see everything, you can see where they're supposed to be, and there's like continuity between scenes. So yeah, again, color would be nice, but the way we saw it is fine too. It's perfectly
Yeah.
serviceable.
So I think we should discuss the climax of the film. So,
Oh yeah.
so it all leads up, all this entire chess match, this fight between Zorro and Monasterio, builds up to a confrontation where he captures De La Vega, and he says, "I know you're Zorro. I can prove it, and I'm going to arrest you here. My superior's coming in, and we're gonna stop this whole thing right now." So the governor comes in, and he's investigating the rumors of corruption and crime surrounding the Commandante, because for the entire year that the Commandante has been in charge, things have been very bad. Now, the Commandante knows this, so what he does is he has this big welcome for a whole bunch of people to come out and see him, and he empties out the jail cell so that, his jail is completely empty. And the governor kind of sees through this, like, almost immediately. He's just like, I have all these reports. I mean, I need to check them again, but like, what's going on? What happened to all this corruption? And Commandante's just saying, oh, that was the previous generals. And I'm just thinking to myself, but there are records. There are records of your time.
Yeah. You think like all I have to do is, yeah, well, let's see like all the prison records, and that would give him away immediately, unless he burned them, in which case it looks even more suspicious. Actually, it's kind of weird that, he has to have an empty jail cell in order to show that he's doing a good job, whereas in today's standards, a full jail is the sign of good work, good police work. Oh, how times have changed.
Times have changed. It's kind of funny, and he at least should have had one person in the jail cell just to say, "Yeah, I'm doing my job." That's what you said while watching the film, and I completely agree with that. But the Commandante is delusional by this point. He's starting to think that the governor's daughter is smitten with him, and he starts hitting on her and like all this other stuff. But the crux is he presents De La Vega as Zorro. The problem is the governor knows De La Vega because their son went to school with De La Vega. Like, they went to college together. So, like, that's strike number one. Now, the Commandante says, okay, I know this is Zorro. I can prove it. He has him in his outfit, like, but De La Vega is very clever about all this. He says, I'm just going to have a talk with the governor. I just want to say a few things. Can you step out for a minute? When the Commandante comes back inside, the governor asks to confirm once again that the person in the costume, in the mask, is really Zorro. And he's just like, there's without a doubt, like, there can be no other that would fit such a build. And then De La Vega comes out of nowhere because he swapped costumes with one of the soldiers just to prove that you can't really tell just by a costume.
Exactly. That was like the best moment ever. Because like he just pops up from behind the bar and he's like, "Oh, hey, Commandante."
And then Bernardo comes out of nowhere in the Zorro getup.
Yes, yeah. Like even after that, like, and the Commandante is still insisting, like, well, yeah, that was just a fluke. Any man can represent his build, but I still insist that he's Zorro. And then all of a sudden, there's Bernardo on the horse, running past everyone, throwing a sword at the door with a note saying, "Hey, sorry, I missed the party." Pretty much, letting De La Vega off the hook completely. And just completely, incriminating the Commandante. Like, that, the scene was just so good. It was so delicious.
Like, this finale, I was wondering how they would do it, but like, just the clever way that he proved that he wasn't Zorro was just like, okay. Vega, you are so cool. Like, I remember, like, watching this, and I'm like, you clever fox.
Literally. It's funny, like, how many of these references actually get reused in the Batman animated series, because there was other episodes I remember, like, 2 episodes in particular, that remind me of things that De La Vega did in the movie. One was where he was pretending to fight really bad, both against the Commandante and the Zorro impersonator. There was an episode of Batman in which one of his old foes from Japan shows up and wants to fight him, but unfortunately he's with like this woman, like one of the socialites. So, and he's Bruce Wayne at this point. He doesn't have his costume. He has no opportunity to change. So he has no choice but to fight badly and lose to the guy who pretty much gives up on him, out of not so much pity, but out of disgust, because he's like, clearly you're not the one I'm looking for. And then the other scene was, with Bernardo showing up as Zorro. There was another episode in which Hugo Strange kidnaps Batman, and of course he knows his secret identity, and he's going to sell it off to the other villains. But then, just as he's about to reveal it, that's when Robin comes in disguised as Batman, and pretty much gets any suspicion off of Bruce Wayne. So seeing that, done in this, it's like, that's what they were doing.
Yeah. And there's also a scene in the Batman the Animated Series where Alfred claims that he's Batman.
Yeah, that was so great. I love that line.
Yes, I am like, Batman. And I'm like,
again, referencing Bernardo, who is basically his Alfred, taking on the Batman suit.
Another similarity is that there's actually like a secret like cave that they have. Like, it's actually kind of a cave.
Yeah.
They press a button underneath the fireplace mantle and it opens a secret door that leads down to a stairs into a cave. And I'm like, yeah.
It's like he even has a fox cave? Like, holy shit, how much did Batman rip off of him?
And so with that being said, Kat, what are your final thoughts on the Sign of Zorro.
I absolutely adore this film, and again, I am so mad that was not able to watch it sooner. Because as a kid, I would have loved this growing up. Because again, I loved watching Batman the animated series. I loved various other superhero films. Like I just like the whole masked caped crusader who works in the dark of the night and uses his wits and cool fighting skills to take down his enemies. It's so great. And Guy Williams is so good in it. It's like, I love that man. Like, if he was alive today, he'd be my crush. But even so, he's still kind of my crush. And yeah, I just found this immensely enjoyable. And again, I love the villain. He's like one of the most competent villains we've had from Disney so far. Like, and just everything else, the choreography, the acting, the pacing, the directing, the writing, like everything about this was so good. And I kind of want to watch more of the series. Like I know there's only 2 seasons of Zorro, unfortunately, because there's a lot of copyright bullshit that went on at the time. But I know there's like other mini series because this is one of those shows that does like the whole mini arcs of it. But I definitely plan on watching more in the future if I can get my hands on it. Hopefully one day I can find the whole season and just binge watch because again I recommend this to anybody who's into superheroes. Like you want to know where the whole masked crusader thing started. I mean, yeah, it kind of started with the Lone Ranger, but Zorro is where it was made badass. So yes, I highly recommend this.
Overall, this film defied my expectations because I like Zorro, but this being a film from the 60s, I expected it to be a little bit more cheesy. I expected it to be a little bit more like kind of the serialized, old school Batman. This is actually really, really good. Like, I've never seen any Zorro film, so this is my first real exposure to Zorro in this form, but it's just like everything is so well done. It's so enjoyable, and all the characters are likable. There's just such an engaging plot line. It's just like every single time I look at something to criticize, I'm like, aside from maybe like a little bit of like maybe slower pacing than what we're used to in modern era, like altogether this film still really holds up. And I think that really they should bring this back because it's a hidden classic. This is a gem of a film, and the fact that it's hidden behind this Disney service is kind of a crime because yeah, like a lot of people can see it on YouTube, but who's gonna be going out saying, "Oh, I'm gonna seek out the Sign of Zorro," when there's hundreds of other adaptations for Zorro? But if Disney put this out and re-released it and marketed it today, that would, this would sell. I don't know too much about the Zorro series. Unfortunately, the information that we tried to find on the Sign of Zorro and the Zorro series is lumped together because on the websites that I used for research, the Sign of Zorro diverted me to the series page, so I couldn't tell you too much about like the film outside of what we already know. And then there's the Zorro the Avenger, which some say like it's a remake or a Spanish version of the film. Like there's been so many conflicting reports that I don't know what is true. If there is a separate film out there, it's not available on Disney's service. And while the actual series is available on YouTube for free, I mean, I didn't know too much about it myself. So, unfortunately, my research has failed me for this because Disney has not made any of this information available or marketed the film enough to where we get like a full Wikipedia page, which is kind of a shame considering we have one on Toby Tyler.
I know, that is such a crime right there. But then again, that's the problem with the Zorro character itself because there's kind of a whole dispute right now whether Zorro is actually owned by the creator's estate or whether it's in the public domain. Like, there's kind of like a whole back and forth between them, hence why we've been getting like different like Zorro variations throughout the years, and even like those two Antonio Banderas movies later on. Like, it's a whole big sort of weird clusterfuck of things. Like, I think for the most part he is in the public domain, but I don't know. I guess because he is, like, Disney can't market him as much, because then he'd have to be trademarked, which can't really do because he used to be owned by someone else. I don't know the whole copyright thing. It's crazy and insane, but I do wish they would market their own version. I mean, heck, I heard they even used to have choreographed fights in Disneyland between actors portraying Zorro and the Commandante, which I think is cool, and I think they should bring that back. But who knows? I mean, maybe one day, maybe an anniversary special or something. Maybe if one day a big name director decides he wants to do his own movie version of Zorro. Here's hoping one day we see the resurrection of Zorro and have more of a reason and give Disney more of a reason to promote his shit, because it needs to be done. Like, definitely.
Agreed. It's a really big shame because this version of Zorro is great, and I don't think a lot of people have seen it, unfortunately. So, guys, I urge you, if you see any film from Disney that we've covered thus far, seek this out. Go on the Disney service, spend $3, watch this film. It is worth your time. I really don't know where else to find it, unfortunately. But really, you guys really should seek this out. Show Disney that we want this back. And if we, increase the interest even a little bit, maybe they'll bring back the characters, because they're doing a lot of these remakes. I know there's the whole copyright battle, but even still, I really want more of this Zorro. So guys, watch it. Go right now. Stop the podcast. I don't even care if you finish the podcast. I don't care about the money. Watch this film.
Go ahead. Do it. Stuff your face. Eat the broccoli.
But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been a really, really pleasant surprise. And so, I had fun with this. I'm really happy to have actually witnessed this. This is one of the good things about the podcast, because there are a lot of Disney films that I haven't seen, and then this is currently like top of my list of, oh my god, I didn't know this was going to be this good. Why does nobody talk about this? So, anyway, I'm Zenith will Rule.
And I'm Kat Macberrie.
And we would like to thank you so much for listening to the end of the podcast. Special thanks to our wonderful patrons who make this happen, especially Taylor Wyatt and Nira Angelo. You guys, your support on Patreon really makes these videos happen, when even my podcast can get demonetized for no reason and then remonetized after I would have earned any sort of money. But your support on Patreon helps us all the much. It really does. You don't even know. If you guys would like to support this podcast or any of the rest of my shows on Patreon, go to patreon.com/ZenithWillReview. You can find all my current videos there, but I will never hide anything behind a paywall. This is just for those who wish to support the show, keep it going when we can't really monetize it to the best of our ability with YouTube systems. We also have perks for those who want them, like there's promotion and other stuff available if you want to check that out. With all that being said, you guys have a wonderful day. Go out and watch Zorro.
TTFN. Ta-ta for now.
And just remember, if you think someone is deaf, don't say anything, private around them, because they could be faking.
Mm-hmm. Zenith, she makes the sign of the Z.
Hey, this is Megami33. Thank you for watching Zenith Woo Review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. If you like what you see, check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/ZenithWooReview.